Hey, it's Russo over at the Worst Seats in the House podcast with Anthony LaPanta. Join us February 17th at 7 p.m. at Tuttles and Hopkins for another fun podcast, plus dinner, drinks, and bowling. That's Tuttles and Hopkins, February 17th at 7 p.m. Hope to see you there.
The Go Gopher Podcast with Mike Grimm, episode number 3. I am Mike Grimm, voice of the Golden Gophers, and welcome back. I think we have another fun episode ahead for you to listen to, but before we get to it, I want to invite you to sneak back and listen to our first 2 episodes if you haven't already. And also, please subscribe to the Go Gopher Podcast from wherever you get your podcast. Our podcast is sponsored by State Farm agent Tony Hoagland at ChamplinInsurance.com. It's been great having Tony Hoagland on board from the very first episode. Tony Hoagland at ChamplinInsurance.com. This week, I'm welcoming a familiar voice to all Minnesota sports fans in general, especially Twins fans, but also Gopher and Big Ten fans. Cory Provus has been the radio voice of the Minnesota Twins since 2011, but he's also been doing football and basketball on the Big Ten Network and FS1 for a number of years as well. Since he's based here in the Twin Cities, he gets a lot of Gopher assignments for television, including the highly entertaining victory over Rutgers this past Saturday in men's basketball. We'll talk with the Big Ten Network's Cory Provus. He's one of us when we return on the Go Gopher Podcast. First, an important word from our sponsor.
Hey Gopher fans, this is your State Farm agent Tony Hoagland. We are super excited to be part of the new Mike Grimm Show on Talk North. For the year of 2022, we will be donating $10 to the University of Minnesota Children's Masonics Hospital for everyone that calls our office or checks in with us online and mentions that they heard about us on Talk North and the Mike Grimm Show. We are really excited again that Mike came on board with Talk North. You can reach us at 763-421-4900. You can find us on the web at ChamplinInsurance.com. Again, 763-421-4900, or find us on the web at ChamplinInsurance.com. Roll the boat, Sky Yuma, go Gophers.
It's episode 3, the Go Gopher Podcast with Mike Grimm. My name is Mike Grimm, and it's our pleasure to welcome to our podcast, episode 3, Cory Provus, who most people that are Gopher fans listening would recognize that name as the voice of the Twins. People outside of Minnesota, around the Midwest and the country, may more recognize him as a guy they see on BTN, the Big Ten Network, and FS1 doing college football and college basketball. A very versatile guy and a good buddy of ours, and Cory, good to see you.
Grimmer, great to be on your podcast. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, let's talk first about that game this past weekend. You had the TV call. I had the radio call. Minnesota shorthanded. You and I talked in the pregame before we got on the air. About 9 o'clock, I guess, word was trickling in 2.5 hours ahead of tip-off that the Gophers would be without 3 starters, including Curry, which we knew about. But we didn't know E.J. Stevens, number 3 scorer, and we didn't know that Jamison Battle, the number 1 scorer, would be out. And I never take anything I do for granted. I always am grateful for the opportunity, but I would be lying to you if I didn't think, this is going to be a long day for the Gophers today. And as it turned out, it was one of the most fun broadcasts I've done in years. It was so fun. The game was great. And to see the Gophers do what they did under man and get the performances they got was just a great Saturday afternoon of basketball, I thought. What did you think watching it and calling it on TV?
You know, Grimmer, I was listening to you and Spence postgame when I was driving home and it's stuck in traffic. And at the end, before Spencer signed off, you guys had a great back and forth about just the pure enjoyment that you both shared with that game. And I said, you're right. That's exactly how I felt, leaving that game, that I just thoroughly enjoyed what I watched. And, I had no dog in the fight. Great that the Gophers won. But seeing, Peyton Willis and Geo Baker go back and forth with big shot after big shot, and then Luke Lowy, who's had a rough go of it here in conference play, and then finding out from Ben Johnson pregame that the guy had IV treatment that morning, that he was pretty much it, that he was the one, he was sick, that you can just do the math, that if he tested positive, then there wasn't going to be a game, that he was the last option in terms of scholarship players available that could go. And thankfully he did, because we witnessed an incredible game. And that was a fantastic atmosphere. And I thought the barn really came to life there. It wasn't a sellout, but man, it was still thoroughly enjoyable watching, those two teams, go back and forth. And I know that, Ben Johnson, the Gophers, some great road wins early, Michigan, Mississippi State. But I have to think, and just my opinion, Grimmer, that was the sweetest win that Ben and the team has had all year.
Yeah, I agree. Given the situation, I even think, and again, not to blow it too far out of proportion, but given the situation specific, like long-term ramifications, this might be a win you look back and say, yeah, that was maybe the hopefully, if you're a Gopher fan, that could be kind of the benchmark win that really solidified the culture that Ben Johnson's trying to instill, that no matter who's on the court, we're going to play hard, you're going to play tough, you're going to be hard-nosed, you're going to be gritty, you're not going to give up on the game. And hopefully that's the culture that is instilled. But that game in and of itself, just with all that was there, the starters missing, and Rutgers is a good club. They've beaten Iowa, they've beaten Michigan. Obviously, we know about the Purdue win. I mean, that's not Rutgers of 8 years ago that couldn't score a basket, basically. This is a pretty good Rutgers team that is hoping to make a tournament for 3 years in a row now.
And they had all their guys. It wasn't like they were without, key players. I mean, they had all their dudes, and I thought it was interesting late in the game. And Cliff Omori has been a consistent player for Rutgers, points and rebounds and block shots. But the last 5 minutes of the game, he was on the bench. I mean, they were going with that Dean Reber kid, and I think there was something that Pico was saying, and maybe wanted to go a little smaller. But to take out a defensive presence like Omori, I thought was pretty significant with how Steve Pico played his rotation. It was a big win for the Gophers. I think looking at Rutgers and their tournament aspirations, that's a bad loss. That's a bad loss because I believe the Gophers' net ranking was just outside that 1 through 75. I think they were like 77, 78. So it would have been a quad 2 win. But it was close. But that was one. And Rutgers, I was reading some articles on their schedule here, a pretty favorable schedule the next week and a half. And then they go into a gauntlet, similar to what the Gophers had earlier in the year, when they're going to play ranked team after ranked team, top 10, top 15 team, some on the road, that they may look back on that one and say, you know what, if we make the NIT, that's one we'll kind of look back on and say we let that one slip away.
Yeah, because if the Gophers can get some semblance and get back into that top 75, that can once again become a quad 1 game, which for Rutgers could have been a 1 win. I know Iowa does not have a quad 1 win yet they're ranked high on the net. They're going to, if they keep going, make the tournament, but they are now cheering for Minnesota to get back in the top 75, so their win a week ago Sunday can qualify them as a quad 1 win. So it's kind of a flexible deal. Now, will the Gophers go on some sort of a run to, I think they're in the 80s now, so they need to win a few games, and they've got a bit of a gauntlet with, as we record this, Ohio State and Wisconsin on the horizon and Purdue looming past that, so that's not an easy 3-game stretch either. But the Big Ten is incredible. What's your impression? You've been around the league a little bit now. So many good players, so many good coaches. I mean, this is a tough battle. It doesn't matter who you're playing.
Yeah, the league delivers year in, year out. I don't know if it has. Like, I thought last year it was never better. I just thought, okay, if the Big Ten is going to break this championship tournament drought, it's going to be, the 2021 tournament. I thought Illinois was the team to beat, and to see, the Big Ten just kind of flame out in March Madness was shocking. The first game I did this season, it was a Michigan State game. It was a non-conference game at East Lansing, and it was just before that appetizer, which I love. In mid to late December, we get to start a conference play a little bit. It was a week before that, and I was asking Tom Izzo, just what do you think about the league going into the year? And he thought Purdue was alone at the top, and then there was a group of maybe 5 teams that were pretty close. You look, I think back at that conversation, maybe now it's easier to do it now, Grimmer, but 5-6 weeks later, I can't tell you who the best team in the Big Ten is right now. I would have thought Illinois was the best team I saw in person. But then I saw Purdue, and they're impressive. And, I saw Wisconsin, and I thought, man, they're putting it together. I saw Ohio State pummel Wisconsin in Columbus. And I said, okay, well, this team could be scary. And then they're going to get some guys back. Okay. I have just no good feel for the top team right now. I think that the Big Ten tournament, is going to be incredible, right? I think 1 seeds could lose early. I think a 4 seed could win it. I mean, it's one of those years in the Big Ten where I don't have a good feel. I think it changes for me week after week. that I think if Purdue can defend, and that's the thing that they're missing, they don't have that Rafael Davis, that Dakota Mathias, that lockdown defender. Now, Jay Knighty maybe should be that, but he's not. And so they're missing that. And with that, they're not the best rebounding team. Great guard play, obviously bigs. They can shoot the three, but they've got some issues. And then Michigan State, I thought, man, going into Madison and pretty much owning that game from the start, I thought that was something. I've been privileged to see all these guys play, seeing Johnny Davis and Keegan Murray and Jay Nyberry and Kofi Coburn. Man, there are some stars in the Big Ten this year. But as we chat now, Grimmer, I can't tell you who the best team in the Big Ten is anymore, because to me it just fluctuates, every day and every week.
Yeah, we, Spencer and I have our 3 topics, 3 minutes in the pregame show on the radio broadcast, and always, every year we've done that. The first game, I say, who's your pick to win the Big Ten? And he said Illinois. I took Michigan as the defending champ and a good recruiting class, and I like what Juwan Howard has done there, and I think Phil Martelli, that guy's he knows hoops, and so I was confident in them. And then, 4 weeks later, we reassess, and Spencer said he'd take a mulligan and pick Illinois, and I said I'll take the mulligan and definitely not pick Michigan, but pick Illinois as well, because we saw them in person beat Minnesota. And now, 2 weeks later, it looks like, well, maybe Michigan State's there. Michigan State barely beats Minnesota, 0.1 second putback, and then loses at home to Northwestern, and you're thinking maybe they're not that good. And then, as you say, they go into Madison and beat Wisconsin, a team that had just finally crept into the top 10 with maybe the best player in the league, in a league with a lot of good players, Ohio State. And now Michigan had a nice win on the road over the weekend at Indiana. So maybe they're starting to find their way a little bit, but there are no easy games, there's no doubt, and maybe that's good. You mentioned Illinois last year. I had them picked in my Final Four. I thought they were so talented. They had good guard play. They had a rim protector. They had the things I think you need to make a run. I did think the Big Ten, because there's so many good teams now, I didn't think they got a great draw with some of it. I thought Iowa was a team with Garza that could make a run, but then they stick Oregon in there, and Oregon had been unhealthy most of the year, and then they got all their guys back, and all of a sudden it's an 8 seed that's probably got the talent of a 3 or a 2 seed, and Iowa had no chance for that given day. So you're right, the Big Ten folded. Maybe this is a year they can try to reclaim something in the tournament.
And maybe Michigan, with the win on Sunday in Bloomington, maybe that will be the catalyst to get them going. I mean, they were sick. They had COVID. They lost days. They lost, games. But the way that Hunter Dickinson played, he was hitting threes on Sunday in Bloomington, and Indiana before that had not lost at home. I mean, Mike Woodson was 12-0 in that same suit. He wore the same suit for all those home games, and then they lose. So I had actually Indiana and Penn State in Bloomington on Wednesday. So I'm curious if Mike Woodson now will finally send that suit to the dry cleaners and go with something else.
No doubt. That's like me, but it's not a suit. It's just the same quarter zip, and people get sick of seeing that. But you got to do what you got to do.
Too. Yeah, it was free.
It was free. Actually, I did pay my own hard-earned money out of that. That's for sure. So let's have some fun here a little bit as you've been around the Big Ten. Talking hoops now, I'll ask you about football in a minute. Where are your favorite stops in basketball? Who has the best home court edge? What's the atmosphere you like the most? Give me 3 or 4 spots that you like as you go around the league.
Nothing beats Mackey. In fact, one of my favorite games was, and thinking about Eric Curry now, is his freshman year. That overtime win, Minnesota at Purdue. And correct me if I'm wrong, it was either New Year's Day or New Year's Eve. It was like right around that time. But Eric Curry was awesome, and that was his best day as a Gopher until he got hurt. And I thought, man, seeing, Minnesota win there, but being at Mackey for a Big Ten game is special. That, to me, that place, Matt Painter, too, was one of my favorite guys to deal with. He's a Cub fan, and I grew up a Cub fan.
Yeah,
such a good dude. And he, it's a lot of these guys are such big baseball fans that I want to ask them about their team. And they're like, no, I want to ask you about what's going on in the game, what's going on with this team. And by the way, where have all these White Sox fans come from? All of a sudden, all these Midwestern people, okay, who now there's this big White Sox fan, okay, and that's kind of gets under my skin a little bit, man.
Well, you're
growing up in Chicago, I'm a Cub fan.
You're Mr. Cub, right?
There's no, the Cubs are out of it now. I root for my city. No.
Yeah.
I want the White Sox to lose and lose every day. And I was thrilled that the Astros beat them. I mean, that was great news. I hate the Astros, but I was an Astros fan that series. And so it's funny. But so get back to your point. I love going to Mackey. I'd be lying, and I'm going there on this week, but doing a game in Bloomington, you walk into Assembly Hall, and they've changed some of the names, but you walk into that gym and you think about Bob Knight, you think about all the great players, and you look up to the roof there, and you see the history. That's a pinch me kind of place. Every time I go there, I've been to Michigan State a few times, but not really for Big Ten games. I've been there more for non-conference, so I haven't seen the big iZone effect. So I'm a little naive with that. I love going to Madison, and I love, I've been privileged. I'm doing it again next month, the Minnesota-Wisconsin game at the Barn. Anytime you do the Gophers and Badgers, I don't care what sport, it's special. And I've only done it for basketball so far, and there have been some great moments. There have been some awesome games, and I think some of the Wisconsin wins with Bronson Koenig hitting big shots. I think Akil Springs had a great play to send a game into overtime a few years ago. So there have been some really neat moments at the Barn. Just thinking about that matchup. So it's hard to pick one, but Mackey is probably my favorite. If I can isolate one, it's hard to be Mackey Arena for me.
Yeah, I think that's the best. I agree. You echo exactly what I think. That's the best home court edge. When I was, before I got the Gopher job in the early and mid 2000s, I was in St. Louis, and we would cover Illinois on occasion, and I'd sneak over there for a handful of games, and that's when they were rolling. That's when they had D. Brown and Darren Williams, and there were some other guys in there, Luther Head, and they went to the Final Four in 05. At that point, that Assembly Hall was crazy, and then they kind of went a hiatus, but it's been good in recent years again, which is fun. But Mackey Arena, the student sections there, the band's right in the visitors' ears. It's an incredible home court edge. And Indiana, I agree, that's my favorite visit. I think Mackey's the best atmosphere. I think Bloomington is the best basketball, but there, you go to Indiana, that's like Minnesota with hockey. You go to Indiana with basketball, the fans know when to cheer. They know when their team needs to get pumped up. They're probably the two best schools. And if the team's struggling a little, like the Gophers played at Bloomington a couple weeks ago, and Minnesota put on a run, and the fans weren't sitting on their hands. They said, hey, they need us, and they got up, and they were proactive. They're smart. They never think their team commits a foul, so they get going. And it's a pretty smart basketball state, obviously.
And think about the Big Ten. So many of the atmospheres and the sport is defined by football. Whether that's fair or not, I think football just seems to drive, that passion. I think Indiana, that's not the case. I mean, obviously, Tom Allen, what they did with the Hoosiers 2 years ago, had that amazing season, and then they had a rough go of it last year. But man, Indiana basketball. I mean, it is about basketball. You're a Hoosier, you're there. I mean, that is something else. And what's also neat too, doing these games on Big Ten Network with my colleagues and these guys have become my friends. But going to Champaign with Stephen Bardo, or going to Northwestern with Sean Morris, or going to Mackey with Robbie Hummel, it's pretty neat. Jess Settles, going to Iowa with Jess Settles, seeing how beloved these guys are back at their alma maters. And the running joke that I have is that just when you think you've seen it all, is that Robbie Hummel, it's like Eddie Murphy in Coming to America. I mean, they're throwing flowers at his feet. I mean, he's got better parking than Matt Painter at that joint. I mean, he parks indoors. I was at Maryland with Len Elmore. Great, one of the all-time great ACC players, and Len Elmore being there with him was cool, and seeing his name up in the rafters. So that's a part of it too. That's pretty neat. You get to meet all these great players and great people, great broadcasters. Then you put them back in their playing environment, and you're reminded with how good they were, but still how beloved that they still are, even though their playing career ended a long time ago.
Yeah, and I noticed you had Jess in the barnyard. He grew up on the farm, and you had him in the barnyard at the barn last weekend.
Yeah, he was going through not just here's a cow, here's a pig. He knew the right breed. He knew. I'm way out of my comfort zone. I mean, this is suburbia
City
here.
Kid from Chicago didn't know that?
Yeah, I was like, no idea what you're talking about. I see a black and white cow, and I see a pink pig. No, that's not it. So he was great. And Jess is, He's fantastic, and we're together again this week, so it's fun being around him.
And how good is Robbie Hummel? I think he might be the best in the country right now as an analyst.
His first game ever was with me. I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you putting him with me?
He owes it all to you, huh?
Me. Yeah, we had a non-conference game. We had a Purdue non-conference game a while back, and that's how it all began. But that first year he started doing games. He didn't do exclusive Big Ten. He was doing some ESPN, and now he's doing Westwood One. He's going to be on March Madness. He's going to be, I hope that we keep him at Big Ten Network and Fox for a long time. But, I think you could see that at some point here, he's going to be, working a March Madness, television crew. He's just that good and great player, and still is playing. He was pretty active in the Olympics 3-on-3 last year, and they nearly won the gold. I mean, that's how well that he still can play. And, all these guys, Stephen Bardo loves coming to the barn because he thinks so fondly of the barn. Robbie Hummel, though, he had that one of his 2 ACL injuries at the barn. So his feelings when he goes back in that building aren't the same.
Well, and, we were there for football with his second injury. The Gophers were playing that day at Ross-Age Stadium, and that morning across the street in a workout, he blew out his other knee. So he's got some rough luck with the Gophers. That was probably because we could tell right away when that happened, and you just get that pit in your stomach. You get it a few times over the years, and Robbie Hummel's probably maybe the favorite opposing player I've covered over the years, just because of the way he played, and I loved his versatility. And there's some other favorites over the years that we've had, but he was one of the opposing guys that we really appreciated. And then when he went down at the barn, it was such, because that team had Final Four capability too, and they still ended up having a good year. But man, that was too bad that he ended up not being. And then he spent some time with the Wolves, and I think he's got some family connections with a cabin here or something. I forget now. We had him on at a halftime one time. He was talking about his family had a cabin up north. But anyway, he's doing really well. You mentioned that you trade baseball stories because of your baseball background with the Cubs and the Brewers, and now with the Twins. And I was in St. Louis. I was doing pregame and postgame show for the Cardinals. So, we hate the Cubs, you hate us, and that is what it is. But the first time I interviewed John Beilein at Michigan for the pregame interview in his first year, I walk in and, I introduce myself. And he's like, "Oh yeah, KMOX." He grew up when he was younger listening to KMOX in upstate New York because it's got the booming signal. And then as he later on he would listen to it, so he knew who I was, which was kind of cool. And then every time from that point on, John Beilein and I would sit down for our little 3.5-4 minute pregame interview. And for the 6 or 7 minutes first, he'd like, "What's Mike Matheny doing? Hey, did you hear what Tony La Russa said? Hey, what are we going to do for second base? We don't have a second baseman in spring training. What's going on?" And Matheny, of course, is a Michigan guy, so later in years, Beilein got to go down for spring training if they were, if it worked out with the tournament schedule and those kind of things. And then Tom Crean, when he got the Indiana job, I had seen him at spring training because he and La Russa were buddies. And so every time we'd see each other, he'd say, "Hey, have you talked to Tony?" And he'd give me the deal on La Russa. And so baseball kind of can be a tying factor because it's America's pastime. Do you have any good stories about coaches that have asked you about the Twins or the Brewers or the Cubs or anybody else?
Tom Crean, big Cleveland fan.
Yeah.
And so Tom Crean would love, now former Indians, now the Guardians. So he is a big Tom Hamilton fan. It was one of my favorite people. Tom Hamilton's been the voice of Cleveland baseball now for a long, long time, and just an awesome guy. And I'm sure you've seen him around the circuit.
He did some basketball. He did some BTN early. Yeah,
for many, many years. Yeah, many years. And now he spends a lot of his offseason time in Arizona. But so Tom would want to talk about the AL Central quite often, and we would get into that a little bit. But Painter has always been the guy. Richard Pitino a little bit. Richard Pitino, when he was here, he would ask me about baseball, and he would talk a little bit about the Twins, but I have yet to find a coach. I had Indiana a couple of times with Archie Miller, and he was always angry.
Yes.
So I didn't see him smile much, and so it was really like, okay, you get 5 minutes, and let's talk about the team, and then I'm going to move on and go sweat some more. So it wasn't. I didn't get that chummy time with him.
Right. Yeah.
And when you're with Izzo, there's so much you want to talk with him about.
He's incredible.
You want to maximize that time. You don't want to just waste it talking about baseball. I want to talk to him about not his team, but the state of the game and the state of the Big Ten. So Painter's always been the guy that he'll talk to you forever. and he'll give you what you need, but then you have to give him time for him to ask you about baseball. And so we spent a lot of time doing that.
Izzo is, I know other teams, and when you're that successful, other teams are going to take the shots, and I'm sure there's Gopher fans listening going, I don't like that guy. But he's a guy, there's been a couple times where I'll go in and do the pregame interview with him, and we'll just start talking. And he loved Flip Saunders, and he knows Ryan, and we talk about that almost every time we see each other and different things there. But there have been probably 3 occasions over the years where I'm like, Coach, we got to get this interview. I'm on the air in about 10 minutes, so let's crank this out. I don't mean, but he just loves to talk. And I asked him one time about that, because if you notice, about a half hour or an hour before the game, he'll just come and sit in a seat at the arena, wherever it is, and he just kind of sits there. And he's like, that's the time that, and other coaches have different philosophies. John Gross wouldn't do the interview with the opposing radio, because he wanted his assistants to get going, because that was Thad Matta, his mentor's style. But most everybody does. But Izzo, there would be times where I'm like, we got to get this done, because I'm on the air here in about 10 minutes. And I love shooting the breeze. Don Zierden, who was a Flip assistant, and then he was the Lynx coach for a while. He was my analyst for 1 year, my 3rd year here, and he knew Flip well. And man, we walked into his office for a shoot around. We were in East Lansing for the shoot around, and Zierden said, "Hey, I want to just go see if he's in." And the SID brought us up there, and it was like a basketball clinic sitting in there. Izzo was showing film and asking, about they had just lost in an upset to Penn State, and he's like, "What should I do with these guys?" It was amazing. So yeah, there's some good coaches in the league that work with the other guys too, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, you pick up little things here, and Chris Holtman. I used to do when I was doing more Fox games, and I would cover Butler quite a bit, so I got to know him at Butler a little bit. But then we've probably had now 10 games over the years. And then I finally realized that we were just talking about this when I had them earlier in the season. Every home game, when Chris Holtman and the Buckeyes are at home, he does not eat pregame meal with his team. His pregame routine is to have at home homemade tomato soup and grilled cheese.
Really?
So that's something that, I like finding out a nugget like that. Yeah. So then, he's coming on the road this week to take on the Gophers. There's plenty of options to get a good, grilled cheese and tomato soup here in town. But that's part of his routine at home, is that he doesn't eat with the team. He just has his tomato soup and grilled cheese. So there's fun little things you find out just talking to the guys. And there's such a big difference, Grimmer. You can appreciate this too, between basketball and football.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about the sport. I'm talking about just the personalities. Yeah. I'm talking about they're human beings. Not to say that they're not in football, but they're so much more guarded. There's so much. Doesn't make them bad people.
Well, they have guys around them protecting them all the time.
Always protecting them. And look, I don't mind sharing this with you. So on Sunday morning, the transparency that we got from Ben Johnson about the status of the team, Jameson Battle, E.J. Stevens, even Will Ramberg is playing with a broken bone in his hand, and Luke Loewy's had IV in the morning. And I'm like, can we talk about that? I was like, that's fine. There's no chance that a football coach would let you say that.
None. And nor would a football coach talk to you the day of the game, probably.
No, that too. And it's just like, you want to know why? It's like, here's who we are. We're not trying to hide anything. This is who we have to play today. We're going to try it, and we'll see what happens. And I love that. And I just wish football coaches, and we talk with these football coaches every week with these calls, and a lot of the time it's a big waste of time.
Yeah.
Because the only thing that in my role that I care about for football is I want to know if 87 is going to play.
Yes.
I want to know if 15 is going to play. I don't need to know your game plan. I don't need to know your first 12, 15 plays you're going to script. I don't care. I just want to know. I don't want to be surprised. That's the only thing. If I need to have 82 on my board, that's all I'm asking.
Yes, the depth chart still matters.
Sometimes getting that.
Yes.
It'd be easier to break into Fort Knox than it would be to get that from a coach. 3 days out.
Yeah.
2 days out from a game. It's silly. It's downright silly. And it's part of the reason why that football, I love it. It's so fun to do, and it's intense, but at times it's not fun because the people that you're trying to work with to promote their team, to promote their school, don't make it fun.
Yeah.
They're not putting you in a position to succeed and to inform the audience, because there's going to be more people watching than there will be at the stadium.
Yes.
right? That's always going to be the case.
Right.
How can we do a good job getting the message out about your team and informing your audience if you don't just tell us who's going to play and who's not? That's all we're asking.
Yeah.
And that to me is a big red flag about football.
Yeah, they all coaches are very tight-lipped. They're all paranoid at football. It is a remarkable situation. I was in St. Louis covering the Rams. Mike Martz, they built a hotel across the street from the from their facility, Rams Park, and he had guys come in and build a wall, like a drive-in theater screen, so that somebody from some other team, the Giants or the Arizona Cardinals or whoever they're playing, he was worried, and maybe there's some truth to it, because I always say, that everyone walks around like there might be spies, and I'm like, well, do you guys go spy on the other teams? But the Rams built this thing because they were worried guys would rent out rooms with binoculars and look across the street and watch practice and get something. But I guess, Belichick filmed practices of the Rams at the Super Bowl, so maybe there is something to it. But yeah, coaches get very paranoid in football. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and how about that story that came out about Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Right, this year, when they're going through those two quarterbacks, and these two students were smart enough to go to a nearby building to go look, to your point about the Rams, and to look and see who's getting the reps. And then the school withdraws their credentials for the rest of the season. Shame on Oklahoma.
Yeah.
These are kids that are doing a good job. Who are they serving? They're serving fans. They're trying to learn about the business. They know their way around campus. I'm like, okay, let's go check this out. Not illegal.
Right.
And I thought that was brilliant. Brilliant by them. And a shame on Oklahoma. Again, it's just football, man. It's that guarded, protective, mentality that it just drives me away from the sport sometimes.
Yeah, it when you try to get info, particularly, and you get even more when, like, you at least are, neutral. Like, for us sometimes to even request info from the other teams, like from our standpoint, our guys are pretty cooperative with us. I can't have any complaints about that. We talk to the coach. They allow practice access for Daryl and Justin Gard and I and those kind of things. So, but obviously I wouldn't expect another team to let us in, but they also aren't all that forthcoming with info. And frankly, the Gophers, I don't think, are all that forthcoming with other teams all the time either, and that just plays into that kind of paranoia that everyone has, that there's some sort of competitive advantage by keeping secrets, and I'm not sure that there are many secrets when you have 8 or 9 games worth of film or 4 or 5 seasons worth of film with the same coaching staff and what have you. So it's pretty interesting. You have, I think, as I mentioned in our open, most people here locally in the Twin Cities and the state of Minnesota and generally the upper Midwest, most identify you, of course, as they should, as the very fine radio announcer of the Minnesota Twins. But you really, as you got into the business, got into it on the college side of things. Kind of take us through your path up through the Minnesota Twins, and a lot of it early was covering college athletics.
Yeah, I didn't do much minor league baseball. Minor league baseball, I did really one summer, and that was when I was in college. I went to school at Syracuse, and there was a minor league team that was a short season single A affiliate at the time of the Astros, and actually Johan Santana was on that team. It was the Auburn Doubledays. It was about a 40-minute drive just outside of Syracuse, and so I did that the summer going into my junior year of college. I did their play-by-play, and we didn't have home play-by-play. It was just PA. I was the home PA announcer, and on the road I did games. And then out of school, I was on more of a college path. Grim, what you're doing, that's the path that I was on and wanted to be on and stay on, was to be a voice of a school, a Division I, Big Ten team. And I got that chance in 2006 at UAB after, filling in here and there with some other schools in the South. I got that chance at UAB, and I thought I was going to be there for a while. Birmingham was a nice big city. The weather was great. Although by now I would have lost all my teeth with all that sweet tea that they drink down there. My dental issues would be pretty prominent. But I thought that's what I was going to be. But then, as it turned out, I was there only 9 months because this great gig came up with WGN Radio and the Cubs, and that kind of got me going. So, but yeah, I loved college. Oh, it's still one of my favorites. I mean, I get asked all the time, "What's your favorite?" Baseball is my favorite. But then a college football Saturday, and I was just harping on how much I don't like about the game a moment ago. But still, nothing beats a college football Saturday. Nothing beats
You're right.
it.
You're right.
I finally got a chance to do a football game in Lincoln, Nebraska this year. And man, It was so cool
Yeah.
to see 95,000 people, all just kind of hanging out. And it was a night game. So to seeing the buildup in Lincoln all day and to see that crowd and to see that energy around Lincoln, Nebraska for a primetime Big Ten game, highlight for me.
Crazy,
That was pretty
right?
awesome. It's so great.
Yeah, I to go back to when I asked you about basketball arenas, so I think bucket list, if fans want to go see someplace in the Big Ten, Mackey Arena in basketball, Assembly Hall in Bloomington, there's no doubt my favorite stop in football is Lincoln. And I know there's a budding rivalry with the Gophers and Huskers for a number of reasons, and the Husker fans on social media are not very nice, I will say that, but Husker fans in person at Memorial Stadium are some of the nicest, most hospitable. It's a great visit. If it's any Big Ten fan listening, if you haven't been there, find your way, find your favorite team. If you're a Gopher fan, get down there when Minnesota's there this fall, because it is an amazing venue, and the passionate fan base is remarkable.
And I'm limited with where I've been in the Big Ten for football games because of the rights deal, and I've never been to Columbus for a football game. I've never been to the Big House for a football game, so there's certain places that I just haven't gone to. But I've been to Penn State now the last 2 years. That's pretty sweet too. And I was with Matt Millen too this past year, and Matt, former Nittany Lion. Seeing him and talking earlier about being at venues with Robbie and Steven while doing a Penn State game in State College with Matt Millen is pretty neat to see people stop by. The dignitaries that would stop by to say hi to Matt was pretty cool, but. I think it's quiet, but I think East Lansing for football is good too. And what Coach D had going there for a while, and now what Mel Tucker is building. I did the primetime game this year, Nebraska, Michigan State. Michigan State won that one in overtime. That was incredible. So yeah, there's some great spots, but I really that being in Lincoln this past year for that primetime game. There's a in the TV booth. There's a toilet. In that booth, it's the Keith Jackson toilet, because for years he was going to Lincoln all the time, right? Those great national champion Tom Osborne teams, and he always complained like, no, it'd be great if you had a bathroom in here. And sure enough, one of those years they renovated that press box, they put a bathroom in that TV booth, and it's called the Keith Jackson toilet.
That's amazing. If there's something you want to be named after, I suppose your name would be.
The guy's got the elevator at the Rose Bowl, right? So you do a game at the Rose Bowl. It's the Keith Jackson elevator up to the TV booth, and now he's got the bathroom in Lincoln.
The toilet, the Keith Jackson toilet. That's pretty good. There are some really cool spots, and it's weird because the quirkiness of the schedule. Just over the years that I've been here, you've got they added Nebraska, then they added Maryland and Rutgers, and then they had legends and leaders, and then East and West, and then we had COVID and games got knocked out. So I've only been to Indiana twice, and I've only been to East Lansing twice, and I've only been to Penn State once in 12 years, just the way the weird schedule works. And, that said, I think this fall we go to Penn State and to Michigan State. So those will be tough trips, but we look forward to it. Do you have a favorite restaurant in the Big Ten or two that if you're going somewhere and that's you're in the night before, you want to catch it?
Zingerman's Deli in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
That is I don't know how those college kids afford it, but that's a pretty good sandwich. That place, that deli, and they got a big menu. That's my favorite. That's my favorite eatery in the Big Ten is Zingerman's in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, we're Spencer and I like Zagreb's, Little Janko Zagreb's in Bloomington. So you're not much of a meat eater, though, are you?
I eat chicken and fish.
Yes.
I don't eat red meat or pork.
Yeah.
But I eat chicken and fish.
Yeah, so I think you could find something there. That's the atmosphere is cool. That's where Bob Knight used to take all the recruits. So there's pretty cool history.
What's the place you took us to? I joined you guys for dinner one night. It's a legendary kind of like a Friday night fish fry supper club. They're known for their salad bar or something like that.
Oh, is that in Illinois?
Yeah, it might be in Champaign. What's the name of that?
That might have been the Ribeye. Was that the Ribeye? There's a Ribeye.
That sounds right. We had a fun table that night. And I remember that's one of your favorite spots. Yeah.
And that I think has since either closed or the pandemic has put a problem. That they have a great salad bar and a good steak.
Yeah,
it
it
used to be right next to the hotel we stay at. We don't stay there anymore. And then for a while we would go to Alexander's, which is a cook your own steak place in Champaign as well. So
I've been to that one. That's a Jay Lehman, former Illinois linebacker. He does football on BTN. He likes that place too. Now that you mention it, you cook your own steak there. Yes, I've seen that. Yep,
yeah, that's a good spot. And then, of course, who could forget the trip to East Lansing where you and Spencer and I went to the very famous and very local Buffalo Wild Wings.
The Buffalo Wild Wings. It's convenient,
it's right across the street.
You can't beat it. It's right across the street from the hotel that every team seems to stay at when they're in East Lansing.
No doubt. Well, hey, we appreciate your time. I want to ask you a couple quick Twins questions, and then we'll let you get on your way. As long as we have you, we'd be remiss not to ask you. Good news here in the last couple of weeks. Your broadcast partner, Dan Gladden, the famous Twin outfielder, has been chosen to go into the Twins Hall of Fame this summer. And I know you, at the end of the day, right, you probably spend more time with him and Kyle Hammer than maybe your family during the summer. And so how meaningful is that to see Danny get recognized that way?
Thrilled for him. I found out a while ago and I had to keep it quiet. And but it's a big deal for him. And this means a lot to him because we've had the privilege every summer whenever the Twins Hall of Fame weekend is that we are joined by that summer's inductee. And they all tell the story, but Rod Carew makes the phone call. He's the chairman of the Hall of Fame committee, so Rod's the one that tells you, "Congratulations, you're in the Twins Hall of Fame." So year after year, hearing Camilo Pascual or Eddie Guardado or Justin Morneau or whomever get in that year, Kadire, and then tell their story, I'd look over to Danny, and I sit on the left, and Danny's on the right, and I could just see what would that call be like? Mm-hmm. What's it like to be on the receiving end of that phone call? And so it was important to him, and deservedly so. I mean, I do get a vote, and I voted for the guy every year. He's a Twins ambassador. I mean, he's a part of the fabric of this team for a long, long time. Player, broadcaster, and he's just a great personality. And the compliment that never gets old is that when a fan comes up to Danny and says, "Hey, we sign a ball," it's always, "Hey, Dan, I love the way you played." Same. I get it every time. And you hear about his career, was undrafted, had to bang down every door to get a chance. Interesting childhood growing up, which he'll get into, I'm sure, in his Hall of Fame speech in August. But he has worked for everything that he has earned right now. It's come with a lot of hard work, and I'm hoping that this will finally force Jack Morris to cut that MVP 91 World Series trophy in half. Because Jack, nobody's saying he didn't do well. He did great, but Jack did not get the hustle double, and Jack did not score the winning run in Game 7. Jack could have pitched 20 innings. You still got to score a run, Grimmer. Somebody had to get the run in, and the guy that's going to the Hall of Fame did just that. So Jack Morris, if you're listening, and I know you are, Jack, you got nothing else to do, cut that trophy in half.
No doubt. There's no doubt that Jack Morris is listening to the Go Gopher podcast with Mike Grimm every week. I'm certain of that, without a doubt. He is doing that. Last one for you. We're all hoping spring training in Fort Myers has become such a great tradition, that migration south to kind of signify the start of hopefully warmer weather. And with basketball, it's hard for me to do that. And I used to love going to spring training with the Cardinals when I was covering them. And someday I'm going to find a weekend. Particularly, I know a couple years ago when you guys played the Gopher baseball team in the exhibition, I was working on a deal where I was maybe going to get on a private flight with some boosters, and then it didn't work out. But sometime I'm getting down there to Hammond Field. Are we going to be able to see spring training baseball? I know there's currently a lockout. I also know you're a little limited in what you can say because you're officially an employee of the Twins. But what's going on here?
Well, I am right now planning on broadcasting the Twins Gophers baseball game at Hammond Stadium on February 25th. I am preparing for that, unless I'm told otherwise. But you're right. We're in a lockout right now. It's frustrating as we just got to wait out the process. there's some plausible deniability on my end, which I like, that I'm not involved in either side. I don't hear from players. I don't hear from ownership. So I'm following along with everybody else. I'm reading the articles, but I don't know if it's accurate. It's frustrating, right? We want to get this thing figured out. All that went on last year, it was or 2 years ago rather, to get 60 games in was a struggle during COVID. We got the full season in last year, and hopefully this thing gets resolved. But I'm not surprised that this thing did resolve and end up in a lockout. But hopefully, we start as the calendar turns to February, it starts to drive the dialogue a bit more, not just meeting once every 2 weeks, but now these become consistent, and we see dialogue happen multiple times a week for the state of the game, for the fans that love the sport, for those that are invested in the sport, for our careers. Yeah, we wanted to see this thing figured out, and we want to see this thing get resolved, and hopefully baseball's coming up soon.
Yeah, let's hope so. Let's hope you are indeed calling the Golden Gophers and the Twins in that opening exhibition. And what a wonderful night that always is. John Anderson, the legendary coach, and I know he and Paul Molitor I think those two guys kind of got that going a few years ago, and to keep that tradition, man, it'd be great to see that game happen and spring training start on time.
And it was fun seeing the Vavras, seeing the Vavras down there too play, and seeing, Dad Joe Vavra was a part of the Twins coaching staff for a long time. And, even before, they started in college, Joe would be out there hitting fungos. But once, the big league camp started, he wasn't dad, he was coach. And he would say, hey, if you want to get your work in, don't do it. You got to go down the street, go to the minor league fields. But it was cool seeing the Vavras, seeing that family kind of all together at once. And but that game's allowed me to spend some time with John Anderson, once every 2 years, I guess it is. And he joins us in the year too, which is really cool of him. It was cool seeing Glenn Perkins when he was still an active player, pitching that game against his alma mater. And that was pretty sweet. So John's done amazing. And now Craig Counsell's son is going to be part of that Golden Gopher team too, seeing the Brewers manager, and I'm sure we'll see Counsell around here a little bit more when he can, just to see his kid play. So that's going to be pretty cool. John's done amazing, and it's just a credit to him and the staff and the way that he's built that program up. And I know they don't play too many home games until like May, but man, they're competitive, they're entertaining, and it's a credit to John and all that he's done.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, I kept you a little longer, but you're so darn interesting. I just had to keep asking you questions.
I think you just forgot about how much time was elapsing here. I don't think it's anything to do with the interesting factor. No, but you're too kind.
Very good, very good. Hey, we will. Let's hope baseball gets going. We'll see you. The good news for you also is that you are assigned some Gopher games in basketball, which means when the game is done, you get to hop in the car, listen to Spencer Tollickton and Mike Grimm on your drive home, and you're home. You don't have to spend the night and get on a commercial flight and come home. So the more Gopher games you do, the better for you, right?
And I will be back at the barn for the Purdue game.
All right.
On February 2nd, be there for that Wednesday night tilt there in the Big Ten, and seeing Zach Edey in person, man. So he's 7'4". Jess Settles doesn't believe it. Jess Settles believes he's about 7'6". But seeing Zach Edey and 7'4" in his size 20 shoe. Isaac Haas still, I think he wore a 21 or a 22 shoe.
Yeah.
Zach Edey is something. And how about this? Purdue's got one more big coming in next year. They've got a kid from Sweden named William Berg. He's 7'2", but he shoots threes.
Oh, man.
So they got another big coming in next year as well.
Never ends there, that's for sure. Well, hey, thank you so much. We'll let you get back to the family, and we'll see you on TV here the rest of this winter, and we'll listen to you on the radio here in the spring and summer.
Grimmer, thanks for the time. Enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you. That's our good friend Cory Provus. My thanks to him for spending so much time with us today. I hope you enjoyed the conversation about the Gophers and the Big Ten, and yes, the Twins as well. This has been the Go Gopher Podcast. It's brought to you by State Farm Insurance Agent Tony Hoagland. Again, I'd invite you to listen to past podcasts, and please be sure to subscribe to the Go Gopher Podcast right now. We can't wait to talk again next week. We'll continue with a basketball theme.